Which NFL teams improved the most entering 2023? Which teams took their stock and absolutely put it on fire, sending it to the moon in 2023? Which teams made their roster better, made their coaching staff better, and made their hopes brighter for this season? These are the most improved teams entering 2023. Gronk, spike the like button. Subscribe if you haven't already for more NFL content just like this. And hop in the comments and let me know which team you felt improved the most this off season. Let's begin with the team that I felt had the most assets to take themselves from playoff team to contender. And that was the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks have improved greatly on both sides of the football. It begins with re-signing Geno Smith. Geno is back, and I feel they have done all they can do to make sure Geno is not only as good as last year, which was very good, but better than last year because they brought in Jackson Smith-Njigba at wide receiver in combination with DK and Tyler Lockett on the outside. It's a match made in heaven. Geno needed that guy over the middle of the field, that intermediate, short threat, the guy that can create yards after the catch while Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf are stretching the field, scaring defenses. Jackson Smith-Njigba is going to catch a ton of footballs early in his career for Geno Smith, and he's going to make this offense that much more productive. This offense, I really, really like. And they finished it with a little bit, just a little bit, of an offensive line contribution. Evan Brown from Detroit is a nice little underrated center from free agency, and they also added a bit through the draft. And then Zach Charbonnet comes in as maybe a pass downs back, maybe just a backup overall to the phenomenal, explosive Kenneth Walker, but this Seahawks offense is not to be messed with. But the defense is really where they improved and put most of their assets. Devin Witherspoon, first-round cornerback, to go along with Tariq Woolen, two totally different type of corners, but two totally awesome corners. Devin Witherspoon plays with a mentality that's just a rare thing for a corner. He can play inside, outside. He can play man press coverage. He gets in your face and he makes plays. They added to the safety position Julian Love, a defensive back that can play nickel or safety. That's got great speed, great range, and just great feel for the game and coverage. That's going to help Jamal Adams loosen him up to play more in the box. And Quandre Diggs, of course, can play his natural role. Bobby Wagner comes back to Seattle, the face of the Seattle Seahawks. Bobby Wagner is back, and that will allow Jordan Brooks to take a little bit of time to come back from injury, but also he's going to really help their run defense, which was a low-key issue for this team last year. What's going to help their pass rush is Jerron Reed, who's also back, a former Seahawk, who's a good interior pass rusher, but Draymond Jones, who they signed from Denver, we may have forgotten, but he got a lot of money to come to Seattle because he's a really good interior pass rusher. So they won't have to blitz as much as last year. They'll be more productive getting to the quarterback with less players. This Seahawks team really did a lot to take themselves from good to great, and they should definitely be in that NFC contender conversation. The next team that had a very similar asset portfolio as the Seattle Seahawks this offseason was the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions had a ton of assets, money, draft picks to improve this team, to go from good to great, just like Seattle. And Detroit, I feel, maybe didn't hit an absolute home run like Seattle did, but did a darn good job, especially in free agency, to fix this secondary. Their secondary was awful last year. Emmanuel Mosley comes in from San Francisco, super underrated, long cornerback who could play man or zone. Then you have Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's a hybrid nickel safety type, played nickel with the Saints, free safety with the Eagles. I felt the most undervalued contract in all of free agency, led the NFL in interceptions last year, and I would say Detroit should start him at free safety to try to get that ball production once again, but he brings a feistiness, a leadership quality, and an edge that every defense should welcome. The reason I say play him at free safety is because Brian Branch out of Alabama could be a very good nickel corner in the NFL. And then you also sign Cam Sutton from the Steelers, who also has the versatility to play inside or outside. And Cam Sutton, mostly experienced in zone coverage, but I feel can also play some physical press man coverage with this defense. Not only did they improve the secondary, but also the second level. Jack Campbell in the first round out of Iowa has the short area quickness and the length to really be awesome in coverage in today's game, but also enough size to not be a liability against the run. I don't think they improved the pass rush quite enough, or as much as I would have liked. The Lions offense was already good in 2022. They just made a couple subtle changes to the lineup. At running back, they switched Alvin Kamara type, Jahmyr Gibbs, for Alvin Kamara type, DeAndre Swift. So I think they're hoping that Jahmyr Gibbs is more of an Alvin Kamara type than DeAndre Swift. And to me, Jahmyr Gibbs was the most explosive player in the NFL draft this year. David Montgomery, power back, almost like a Mark Ingram type. Interesting. I see what you're going for, Dan Campbell. He's in, Jamal Williams is out. Funny enough, he goes to New Orleans. At wide receiver, the only bad thing to happen is that Jamison Williams, gone. Suspended. That fiasco. But he'll come back eventually. The offensive line is pretty much the same, other than them adding Graham Glasgow and losing Evan Brown. And the tight end position, okay, Sam Laporta has potential as a receiver. And of course, they added a quarterback for the future in Hooker. So, I like what the Lions did. I feel like they improved greatly on defense. They made the subtle changes on offense that they felt could take them to the next level. And what I do know is this is the most talented team in the NFC North. They just have to act like it and play like it in 2023. The Carolina Panthers finally had enough. They were fed up with the quarterback position. And so was Frank Reich. A perfect marriage. Frank Reich didn't like the Matt Ryan or the Carson Wentz or the Phillip Rivers. He went down that road and it didn't exactly work out for his Indianapolis Colts. He comes to Carolina. The Panthers, meanwhile, have been through Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold and quarterback after quarterback. And they both just decide, let's just do it. Let's just trade up and get Bryce Young. Frank Reich sees the game through the quarterback position. I'm sure he'll set up Bryce Young with a chance to succeed early on. And Bryce Young, to me, has the acumen and the intelligence to play right away. He can play in this league right away. They support him with a solid offensive line that they didn't have to make much changes to. Miles Sanders should help them in the run game. And they added more depth to the receiving core. Yes, they lost DJ Moore in that trade, but they also added Adam Thielen, a veteran presence. They added a speedster, vertical threat in DJ Chark. They added a young player in Jonathan Mingo, and then also a reliable yards after catch tight end in Hayden Hurst. So all the pieces are there for Frank Reich to operate and call this offense the way he wants, and the quarterback is in place to have a much better, much more consistent offense than the past couple of years in Carolina. The defense has been carrying this football team, and they arguably got better. One of the low-key additions to this team was the defensive coordinator, Evero, who comes from Denver. I felt did a very good job with that Denver defense last year. I think he's going to get them back to fundamentals and play much better and much tighter in coverage overall. I think this secondary has what it takes, adding Von Bell to the mix at safety, getting healthier with J.C. Horn coming back. And then the front got better with Shai Tuttle added to Derek Brown, and then Deshaun Williams coming over from the Broncos. This defense was already good. I'd expect them to be very good in 2023. The Panthers made the big move and made a big push to get to the playoffs this year. The Houston Texans had the second pick in the 2023 NFL draft, and they also went with the quarterback CJ Stroud, my favorite quarterback from this class. And I believe, low-key, the Texans have supported him with an interesting offensive supporting cast. I don't think it's as talented as Carolina or many of the best offenses in football, but the Texans have enough there for CJ Stroud to not be a disaster in his rookie season. I also believe that his game, his accuracy, his NFL ability to make tight window throws will make these receivers better. It's kind of an interesting group. Some veterans in there with Robert Woods, some younger guys coming back from injury like John Mechie, a guy like Nick Collins, who we don't exactly know what he is yet. They added Tank Dell out of the draft. A few different players, Noah Brown out of free agency from Dallas, where maybe he can contribute as a secondary receiver. And then Dalton Schultz, also from the Cowboys, as a pretty reliable over-the-middle threat on this offense. They have a lot of pieces to throw it to. There's no alpha in this group, but I feel like enough to not be a disaster. And I'd say the depth improved, even if they lost Brandon Cooks. The offensive line is where they did really improve, and I would also say that it was already decent last year, but they have a very good tackle duo. They add Shaq Mason to the inside with Kenyon Green at the other guard. Shaq Mason's been a great guard for a long time. I still think he's good. I don't think he's great or elite anymore, but he's still very, very good. And then the center they add from the second round, who they were very high on. So I expect them to have a improved 5 protecting their quarterback, and we know their running back can already play. So this offense, really intriguing. I think a higher ceiling than people think. It will come down to the new offensive scheme, how CJ picks that up, and how he plays as a rookie. But I think they definitely improved their talent at quarterback, their depth at wide receiver, and their overall play at the offensive line and tight end. The defense definitely improved in terms of talent, and I would say coaching. Lovie Smith is out. DeMeco brings his own set of rules and schemes, and DeMeco Ryans was a great coordinator for the 49ers. Yeah, he had a lot of talent, but he was also really creative in his game plans. And he gets his guy, Will Anderson. They had to pay a ton to get him, but that's going to make them better this year. There's no doubt about it. They pay Sheldon Rankins to get better right now. He's going to be their best D tackle on their team right away. They've got a plethora of pass rushers to support Will Anderson on the opposite side, whether it's veteran like Jerry Hughes or Greenard as well. And then the linebacker position gets better with Denzel Perryman, who just flies after the football and's got great capabilities to stop the run. And the corner position, I think, was already pretty solid, and there's some young players that should get better there like Stingley, but safety will be held down by Jimmy Ward now, who's basically the older version of Jalen Petrie, who they really liked out of last year's class. So with the coaching coming in with DeMeco Ryans and company and some San Francisco flavor, some Shanahan flavor on offense, and some improvement at key positions like pass rusher and quarterback, the Texans certainly have a lot of youth, but I would say a lot more upside than in recent years. The Atlanta Falcons kind of had an interesting offseason. For a team that doesn't have a win-now quarterback, this is a team that made a lot of win-now moves. They really improved their defense, but it was also by bringing in some older names. Calais Campbell, a Hall of Famer in my opinion, slotting in on the interior defensive line to help out. Another older borderline Hall of Famer, Grady Jarrett. And then another awesome player in David Onyemata. So yeah, their interior defensive line is older, but they're good. There's no doubt about it. That will help their pass rush. They haven't had a lot supporting Grady Jarrett. Those guys definitely will. Caden Ellis comes in with familiarity with this scheme that comes from New Orleans as a great blitzing linebacker from the Saints. And the secondary is going to be improved because Jesse Bates is one of the best pure free safeties, maybe the best pure free safety in the game today. Along with AJ Terrell, they pick up Jeff Okuda, add some complementary pieces in that secondary along the way, and I feel like the Atlanta Falcons have definitely improved their defense. The only thing I would say is they still have yet to add that premier edge rusher, but they have enough now defensively where they're not an absolute joke at any level of their defense. Offensively is where they may be the most unique unit in the NFL. Desmond Ridder is not a guy that I believe in, but I don't really have to believe in this offense because Arthur Smith is all about the O-line, the running game, and the play action, and how that sets up a quarterback to succeed. And as long as Ridder can be accurate and make good decisions with the football and then run a little bit, he'll be fine because Bijan Robinson is an absolute monster. He could lead the NFL in rushing right away. You got Tyler Algier behind him. Cordell Patterson still there, by the way. Jonnu Smith, who they traded for to add some more multi-dimensional tight end sets. Kyle Pitts can now play wide receiver more frequently with Jonnu coming in. And then you got Drake London coming into his second year. Mac Hollins, who I like that improvement at wide receiver, with him being like a special teams ace, but also a pretty good jump ball guy. And Scotty Miller adds some speed down the field. The offensive line, Matthew Bergeron comes in to secure that last final spot in the offensive line. By the way, one of the best O-lines in football, in my opinion. Chris Lindstrom signed up long-term, great deal. I think Atlanta is being slept on right now, and really it's for good reason because the quarterback. But when you look at this team, this roster all around, they're competitive, they're good, and if this Arthur Smith offense can look the way it looks in his head, I could see them winning this division. The next most improved football team is the Chicago Bears. The Bears are one of the most improved football teams. Everyone was steaming them up. Everyone was loving their free agency earlier this offseason, and I can't blame them. But what I will say, what they did extremely well is help Justin Fields. As a Patriots fan, I still feel like we could help Mac Jones more, but the Bears have set up Justin Fields with everything he needs to succeed. An offensive line that is greatly improved. The right side of the line is now one of the best in football if this first round pick that they picked in the top 10, Darnell Wright, is really the real deal. Because Darnell Wright looks to be the real deal in pass protection. You bring in Nate Davis from Tennessee, who I love as a run blocker especially. We know this line can already run block from last year. And then you add DJ Moore, a legit number one option who can play everywhere from inside to outside, who's got speed, who fits Justin Fields' game. You have Chase Claypool and Darnell Mooney and Cole Kmet as secondary options in the offense already. Dante Foreman and Roshan Johnson are a powerful running back duo, and then Khalil Herbert will add a little bit of elusiveness and speed. This is a complete, well-built offense for Justin Fields this year. Defensively, they still leave a lot to be desired, but they did improve in a couple areas. Linebacker, most specifically, jumps out at you because they have one of the best duos in football now with Edmonds, who's a super athlete, and then TJ Edwards, who's just a very smart and savvy coverage player from Philadelphia. I'd also say that the defensive line maybe slightly improved with a couple veteran names, but nothing too crazy. And then the secondary, they did add Stevenson from the draft from the U. So I like what the Bears did overall this offseason, especially when it comes to, well, let's see if Justin Fields is really the guy, because that's what this season is all about for the Bears. When it comes to some football teams and improvement, it doesn't always have to be due to the roster. And one of those teams is the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have improved simply because they have brought legitimacy, professionalism, and real coaching to the table to the Denver Broncos. Sean Payton is the biggest coaching upgrade imaginable from what they had last year in Mr. Hackett, who now is with the Jets. It's not even a discussion. It is out of this world difference. Vance Joseph also returns to Denver as a defensive coordinator. I feel he's a very good defensive coordinator, very creative, very smart guy. I really love Sean Payton, though. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time, in my opinion. I think if there's anyone that can get the last breath and gasp out of Russell Wilson's career, it's him. The wide receiving core that's been a little underwhelming as of late, it's him. Javonte Williams off injury, it's him. Now, they did improve their offensive line. That was rule number one and stage number one of this offseason. Let's get Mike McGlinchey from San Francisco to play in this offense. Let's add Ben Powers from Baltimore, who I liked more than the McGlinchey signing personally. I think Denver has all the pieces now. They have the protection. They have the options at wide receiver. They have good running backs. I think Denver has it all, and a scheme that should allow Russell Wilson to thrive if he has anything left. Defensively, they were already good last year. Yeah, they don't have Von Miller anymore or Bradley Chubb anymore like the last couple of years. But Randy Gregory, and they've got a good defensive line, and they bring in Zach Allen, who I thought was one of the best signings of the entire offseason. Love him on the interior defensive line. He comes back to a Vance Joseph scheme that he's familiar with from Arizona. And then you already have good secondary players, Pat Surtain, and obviously my guy Simmons. So there wasn't a lot to be done with the defense or really with the roster for Denver. It was all about just adding a coach that knows what he's doing. And I think Denver may have done that this year. Just like the Denver Broncos, my New England Patriots go from the worst offensive coordinator situation I have ever seen in professional football to an offensive coordinator who I used to adore his offenses back in 2010, 2011. The Tom Brady, dual tight end Wes Welker era of Patriot football. Bill O'Brien's now the OC of the Patriots. And whatever you think of Bill O'Brien, the general manager, as a football coach, he has proven to succeed at every location he's been at. He's the most successful Texans head coach of all time. He got Penn State back on track and that entire organization and school. And he was good at Alabama. And he helped Bryce Young become the number 1 pick. And because of his expertise from Alabama, and not only his understanding of New England football from Josh McDaniels and that entire tree, but now he has experience with the college game, with these prospects coming out from another organization with a young quarterback, Deshaun Watson with Houston, and he can bring all this flavor and layers to the already existing New England offense that he had in 2010 and 2011, and bring that to Mac Jones and really maximize Mac Jones' capabilities as an intelligent quarterback who is best with his brain and his accuracy. And that's going to make this offense exponentially better to a degree that I don't think anyone sees coming. Yeah, did they improve at wide receiver with Juju over Jacoby Myers? In my opinion, yeah, they got more explosive. Did they improve at tight end with Mike Gesicki over Jonnu Smith? Yes, they did. Did they swap James Robinson for Damian Harris? Yes, they did. Maybe a little bit more receiving upside, maybe a little bit less electricity from that backfield now. But I feel like the biggest addition is Bill O'Brien, his competency, and his ability to get his quarterback to play well and put him in a place to succeed. The offensive line as well cannot be overlooked because last year it was a disaster in terms of organization. And this year, Isaiah Wynn leaves, who was leading the NFL in penalties, and they bring in a professional Riley Reif and a guy with upside in Calvin Anderson and a lot of depth through the draft. So this is a deeper offensive line, which was already good, but they just needed a little bit more coaching. Adrian Clem comes in as the offensive line coach from Oregon, and now they actually have an offensive line coach instead of Matt Patricia being the O-line and the offensive coordinator. So Bill Belichick recognized his mistakes last year, and they fixed them. And I feel that's going to make them much, much better and much, much better, especially offensively. Defensively, they were already second in EPA allowed last year. They were already the second best defense in the NFL last year, according to EPA. So, that being said, what did they do? Well, not really a lot. They didn't have to do a lot. But Devin McCourty retires. You end up drafting Christian Gonzalez to be a legit number 1 cornerback, along with all those younger guys, Jack Jones and Marcus Jones, getting better in year 2, and allowing Jalen Mills to shift to safety to potentially replace Devin McCourty. You add Keon White to the second round to add a layer of depth to the defensive line. And overall, this unit will just have a ton of chemistry and a ton of rapport because everyone is back from last year. So the New England Patriots are going to be greatly improved this offseason, mostly because Bill Belichick got his head out of his rear end, recognized his mistakes in terms of his offensive coaching staff, and made that a lot more professional. And the final team that I felt greatly improved entering 2023 is the New York Jets. There's no doubt about it. The New York Jets were a talented team last year. but they just did not have a quarterback. Whether it was Zach Wilson, who everyone likes to hate on, or Mike White, as much as we love Mike White, it's just not Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. Now, it's going to be weird seeing him wear the number 8, although that's my personal favorite number, so I love it. But the Jets now have a real awesome quarterback. A guy at the helm that won the MVP in back-to-back seasons before 2022, where he was dealing with a lackluster receiving core, a lot of rookies, a play caller he didn't really agree with, and just a lot of friction with the franchise. Aaron Rodgers now reminds me of Tom Brady, right? From 2019 to 2020, going to Tampa Bay. He's loose. You see him smiling. He's having a good time. He's at the Knicks game. He's at the Rangers game. He's living it up in New York. And you can see that he's going to have fun. And a guy that's having fun at this age, you just feel like he's going to play great football. Garrett Wilson is there to be his alpha target. Breece Hall to be his number 1 back. Solid tight ends with Conklin and Uzoma. And then a bunch of his buddies. Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. They brought in Mecole Hardman from the Chiefs. They've got players. Corey Davis, maybe, if he remains. And then the offensive line is very solid across the board, especially at guard and center. And hopefully Becton can play well and remain healthy. And also, they brought in Billy Turner, also from the Packers. So he's got a bunch of his buddies around him. The play caller is his friend. The receivers is his friends. But also, he's got the upside of those playmakers from the Jets. Then we know what they can do defensively. And they didn't really do a lot to improve the defense because it didn't need to be improved. It was already elite last year. But they did add a nice pass rusher out of the first round in Mr. McDonald, who is one of my favorites. And then the safety, Chuck Clark, comes in from Baltimore to replace LaMarcus Joyner. Overall, though, the Jets didn't have to do a lot on defense. It was more about finding their quarterback, the guy that can take them to the promised land, and that might very well be Aaron Rodgers. Those are the most improved teams entering the 2023 NFL season. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, Gronk, spike the like button and subscribe. It's Mitch. Peace.